Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. She's just in the way. From the window of the speeding car, my mother-in-law looked down on me with a mocking smile. It all started on the first day of a family vacation with my husband's family. On the way to a luxury hotel, we stopped at a highway gas station, and suddenly I was left behind, all alone. I was completely lost and stood frozen on the spot, a moment I'll never forget. My name is Susan. I'm 30 years old, and I focus on housework, not working outside the home. My husband, Thomas, is a management consultant and often away from home. Since I spend a lot of time alone and my husband has been covering all of mother-in-law's living expenses since my father-in-law passed away, we decided to live with her in our home. Mother-in-law was thrilled that her only son was moving back home, but she seemed displeased that I, his wife, was coming along. I'm not glamorous, and I have no interest in designer brands. I do a lot of water-related chores, so even with care, my hands get rough, and I choose clothes that are easy to move in. To mother-in-law, I seemed like an embarrassing daughter-in-law to show others. Mother-in-law, Linda, has always been a show-off obsessed with appearance and brands. She's long since spent her grandfather's inheritance and her savings, but she has no intention of changing her luxurious lifestyle, always begging my husband for more. My husband always firmly refused, saying, "I'm giving you living expenses, not money for luxuries," but mother-in-law never gave up, always causing trouble. Furthermore, my sister-in-law and her husband live nearby. Sister-in-law, Jessica, has the same character as her mother, always making snide remarks like, "Thomas could do better than a plain woman like you." She comes to our house every day, demanding meals, baths, and drinks, but never contributes money or helps with chores. You're Thomas's wife, so it's only natural that you do all the housework. You're not good looking, so at least keep the house clean, she'd say. Thomas is too kind. Susan has always been poor and doesn't understand anything about brands. Mother-in-law would tell my husband, "I do all the housework myself," and sister-in-law would claim, "We're good friends." I've been working in customer service, so I've been using that experience to avoid major conflicts with mother-in-law and sister-in-law for the past few years. For years, my husband noticed everything, from me doing all the housework to my sister-in-law's terrible attitude. But he didn't confront them directly because I asked him not to. I wanted to avoid a complete breakdown with my husband's family, no matter what they did to me. My husband respected my feelings, but he'd often say, "You don't have to push yourself too hard. I'm okay with cutting ties and living separately." But I wanted to try a little harder, so I thought of planning a family trip to improve our relationship. When I proposed the idea, my husband agreed, saying, "That sounds good. I can take time off next month, so let's all go on this year's trip." Since we were dating, my husband and I had been traveling regularly. Even after moving in with my mother-in-law, we enjoyed occasional trips just for the two of us. But once mother-in-law and my sister-in-law realized we were staying at luxury and famous hotels, they insisted on coming along. "You two are so heartless, going on luxurious trips without us. From now on, take us with you and make sure it's extravagant," they demanded. Because they were so persistent, I told my husband that this time, we had booked a luxurious hotel for the whole family. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were thrilled, but just before the trip, my husband's work made it impossible for him to join us. I thought about postponing the trip, but mother-in-law had already bragged to the neighbors about the souvenirs, so she insisted we couldn't change the plans. Reluctantly, I agreed to go with the four of us, excluding my husband. On the day of the trip, I put mother-in-law and sister-in-law's luggage in the trunk, and since there was no room left, I carried my travel bag inside the car. Throughout the drive, mother-in-law and sister-in-law kept making snide remarks from the back seat. Feeling fed up, I glanced at the empty passenger seat where only my travel bag sat, and I began to feel a little uneasy without my husband. Even as I drove onto the highway, mother-in-law's complaints never stopped. "You're driving so slowly. Are you just careless because Thomas isn't here?" she accused. "Really, there was an accident today. So you're just good at making excuses. You must have deceived Thomas the same way. I didn't deceive anyone. If only slow Susan weren't here. This trip would be more fun, right, Mom? Sister-in-law chimed in, echoing mother-in-law's sentiments. Indeed, eventually, as we were about to arrive at yet another gas station, sister-in-law surprisingly suggested that my husband drive the rest of the way. You must be tired, Susan, having been forced to prepare mother-in-law's luggage and clean the house before our early departure, she remarked. Exhausted, I agreed. Susan, could you buy drinks for everyone? Mother-in-law asked as I got out of the car to switch drivers. She gave me a friendly smile, unlike her usual self. Sure, that's fine, I replied. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were unusually kind. Maybe they wanted to improve our relationship, just like I did. I felt relieved and was about to walk away from the car when suddenly the engine started and mother-in-law threw my luggage out of the car. Then, with a big smile, she yelled at me, "Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. You're just in the way." I stood there, watching the car drive away, leaving me and my travel bag behind. I was completely lost and stood still for a moment I will never forget. Finally, I realized that no matter how much I did for mother-in-law and sister-in-law, it was all in vain. I reached for my travel bag left in the parking space. My vision suddenly blurred, and surprised, I ran to the restroom, covering my eyes with a hand towel as tears began to flow uncontrollably. I don't remember how long I was there, but I noticed a call on my mobile phone and checked the message. It was from my husband, who had finished work early, expressing concern about the trip with mother-in-law and the others. While I was reading the message, my husband called. "Thomas, I'm alone at a highway gas station right now," I said between sobs. "What happened?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Hearing his voice, I couldn't help but cry again. He patiently listened to my explanation without rushing me. "I'm really sorry that Mom and the others did this to you. I'll come pick you up right away," he said. "I'm sorry this happened." "Why are you apologizing, Susan?" "Because I wanted to get along with your precious family, and I couldn't," I confessed. "I want you to tell me how you really feel. Do you still want to try to make things work with Mom and the others?" "Right now, I can only think that it's too difficult," I admitted. "I see. I'm sorry for what my family did. I'll handle the separation and everything else with Mom and the others." "But is it okay for you to leave your feelings as they are?" he asked. "My feelings? You've been holding back from me all this time, haven't you?" I realized. Thinking back, I realized that I had always been holding back. But I had been angry with my unreasonable mother-in-law and insensitive sister-in-law all this time. "Yes, I can't be with those people I absolutely hate," I declared. Expressing the anger I had been suppressing felt surprisingly refreshing. "You can do whatever you want from now on, Susan. I'll take care of the rest," my husband assured me. "I understand. No matter what happens, I won't let them hurt you anymore. I made that firm resolution," I said determinedly. A few hours later, my husband came to pick me up at the gas station. Being with him made me naturally smile, and I realized how calmly and happily we could spend time together, even though we were traveling the same distance. I couldn't help but grin a little, even though I felt bad for my worried husband. Thanks to his thoughtful care, I was able to rest well. When we got home, the next day, my husband made a surprising proposal. "I've narrowed down the options for our new home to places near Susan's parents' house," he announced. "What? What's going on all of a sudden?" I asked, taken aback. "I want to make sure we're not bothered by Mom and the others, so let's finish moving during the 3 days of the trip," he explained. "Will it be difficult for you to move, Susan?" he asked, his smile masking any frustration he might have felt. My careful and planned husband would never do something so sudden. I felt that he was quite angry inside, but he had a lovely smile for me. "I'm all for moving. Let's get started right away," I replied enthusiastically. We quickly found a new home and moving company, and we were able to move without any problems. During this time, I received several emails from mother-in-law and the others. We're having the best trip without you. The hotel is luxurious and wonderful. Make sure it's at this level next time, one email read. Dinner was the most extravagant and delicious ever. It's even more fun without seeing Susan's ugly face. Traveling with just the family is so much more relaxing. The jacuzzi is amazing, another email boasted. Their enjoyment of the luxurious time at the high-end hotel came through clearly. I was looking forward to what would happen next. At around 10 o'clock a.m. on the checkout day, as expected, I received a call from mother-in-law. "Susan, what's going on? What do you mean?" she demanded. "They told me the accommodation fee is $10,000. If the young lady isn't there, it's completely different from what you told us at first," she continued. "It's only natural that the regular accommodation fee applies since I booked it through my connections, and I'm not there," I explained. "What do you mean? That hotel is run by my relatives," she explained. "Well, I didn't know that. By the way, all the hotels we've stayed at on our trips were run by those relatives, so we were able to stay at a discount," I replied. "Susan, you've never told us that before," she accused. "Thomas told me to keep quiet about it because if Linda and the others found out, they'd demand it be free," I confessed. "Anyway, the accommodation fee is correct. So please pay it yourself," she demanded. "Wait a minute. I can't pay $10,000. I didn't go on the trip, so I can't pay for you all," I protested. "Don't say that. Do something. We're family, right? You said the wife of your son isn't family, didn't you? You all enjoyed yourselves as a family, so please pay as a family," she pleaded. "Goodbye," I said, hanging up. I ignored mother-in-law, who was still yelling on the other end of the phone, and hung up, feeling refreshed. In the end, mother-in-law and the others borrowed money from a shady source to pay for the accommodation or something like that. Furthermore, when they returned home, they couldn't get living expenses from my husband or me since we had moved, and they ended up fighting and parting ways with sister-in-law's family. Sister-in-law's family also deteriorated their relationship and divorced. Sister-in-law, abandoned by her husband and without income, looked for work in the nightlife but seemed to have trouble finding employment due to her bad personality. With no one left to rely on, mother-in-law even went to my husband's company to seek help. At that time, mother-in-law looked older than her age, with hollow eyes, a haggard face, and dirty clothes. Even when she was crying and begging in the company lobby to live with us, my husband firmly declared a break in relations. After that, mother-in-law ended up working exhaustively at a terrible job. Several years have passed, and now we have a lovely child and are living very happily. We are planning to stay at that luxury hotel we couldn't go to before, just the three of us as a family. The hotel owner's relative invited us because they want to meet our child. We are looking